All right, well, welcome to another episode of Pursue the Hunt Live, and we've got a special guest today, Robin Rutledge, and we're going to be talking about conservation stuff today, so that's super exciting.
All right.
And before we get into it, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Eagle Vision Video Productions, and also Peace Vale Meat Shop. So we'd like to just give a shout out to those guys. So welcome here, Robin, and why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Mike. It's a pleasure. Just kind of started following along with what you're doing here, so it's great to get on and get involved with everything here. So, my name's Robin Rutledge. I'm local here to Fort St. John, BC. I grew up southwestern Manitoba, and not originally from the area, but like everyone else, you move here.
Yep.
And I've been up here for about 10 years though now, and really just came up here for work like everyone else does, and now have met my wife and got a couple kids, and we got a little acreage out of town, and getting into that. So I've been hunting and everything pretty much my whole life, and fishing and all that as a kid in southwestern Manitoba. There's definitely not the mountain pursuits that we have available to us here, but grew up walleye fishing and whitetail hunting and waterfowling, which is my absolute favorite, but don't get too many opportunities to waterfowl.
We're kind of on the western part of that flyway.
Yeah, so hopefully in the near future be able to get back into that a little bit more, but two young kids, a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and everything's busy. So,
I hear that.
Yeah, you've got a few kids.
Yeah,
yourself.
we got 4.
So
that's okay. You'll catch up.
Exactly. Yeah. In the last few years, I've been volunteering a lot more with wildlife conservation groups, such as the Wild Sheep Society BC. I'm currently the secretary for the Wild Sheep Society BC, and I sit on a couple of other boards and committees locally, and just put your hand up and get involved in local wildlife conservation. So,
nice. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program. So just to kind of go over a little synopsis about what we're going to be talking about today. There's been a few BC regulation changes, so we're going to talk about a few of the bigger ones and maybe some that pertain to you and I in the 7B region. We'll talk a little bit about, we'll give our 2 cents maybe a little bit about some regulations that maybe we feel that should be looked at. And then we'll talk about the Wild Sheep Society, some of the projects you guys got going on right now, maybe how COVID's affected some of those projects, and of course the big news with that herb being affected down there in the interior. That's a big deal. And then we'll let the audience know about some of the groups that they can be involved with if they want to get involved themselves. So that'll be all great stuff. So, okay, let's start with BC regulation changes. So they came out with the new regs a little bit ago now.
Yeah.
But I felt like, this might be a good opportunity to just label some of the bigger ones that we've found. Hunting season's literally right around the corner. Moose opens up here on Sunday.
It's open here right now.
Yeah, black bears already open. Some stuff to be aware of.
Here? It should be.
It's too warm. It's too warm, right? So one of the big ones, and we had mentioned before in earlier programs that myself and my 2 brother-in-laws, we drew the shared bison LEH, which we're super excited about. And then they opened up a general bison season.
Yeah.
So those are on the north and the southern fringes of the LEH zone. So what's your take on that? Like, what's your take on opening up the buffalo, the good, bad, and the ugly?
So I did sit on a committee that was part of making that decision.
Okay.
And there was definitely a lot of discussion around just the rationale, and what it comes down to is that herd is growing in population, they're expanding in their range, and so the regional biologists are concerned because they don't want the group of buffalo or bison that are up at the yard to get intertwined with the group that is at the halfway sickening.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the area that they are seeing some of these, mostly just the lone bulls that venture out of the group, they're seeing them ways out of their normal ranges.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just it's a measure that they want to put in place to try and prevent that halfway sickening herd from migrating north,
Mm-hmm.
further north, or to the south. So they want to keep them in that area where they've been known to exist. So that herd was, I believe it was released in, it was like 30, 40, like in the 70s, I think.
Okay.
So we're talking like 50 years ago now.
And that was the Sickiny halfway
The
herd.
the Sickiny halfway herd, and so now they've become residents of that area.
Mm-hmm.
They estimate the population to be around 1,200.
Okay.
And they want to manage it to around 750 is the objective.
Okay.
And so with that, the discussion led to, well, how do we keep them in the area we want to keep them in, but also, prevent them from venturing out of that area. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where the two open season areas came in to kind of push or haze, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
those animals that are outside that core range back into that area of the LEH zones.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year the LEH authorizations were also increased in those areas because of the population and wanting to have a greater success on the hunter harvest side of things.
Okay.
So yeah, you if you would have noticed between last year's LEH and this year's LEH, you would have noticed there probably would have been a few more authorizations put in there.
Okay.
And that was the whole premise, was like, we're going to increase the pressure on the outside of the range. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to pressure them into the middle, and then in the middle, we're going to have more allocations spread out across all the dates that you can go and hunt. And so, yeah, we realize there's going to be some increased pressure, and a lot of people, I know I've been talking to a few people that, not from the region, but out of region, and they're excited that there's an open bison season. And there's going to be some traffic. That's to be expected, but it's not going to be easy.
No.
And like I've drawn that LEH myself, lucky enough. I don't want to tell too many people, but first year I put in, me and our group, we got it.
We got it our first
Did
year.
you got it? Oh,
yeah,
so there you go.
It's kind of like winning the lottery. I get it. Yeah.
A lot of people stare at you with the angry eyes when you tell them
Yeah.
you got it your first time. But either way, we went, and honestly, it was one of the hardest hunts I've ever done.
Yeah.
Well, one of, like,
Yeah.
it's right up there. And then, a lot of the times those harder hunts are for smaller animals. Like, you got to think you're going to put a 1,800-pound animal on the ground.
And then what?
And then what?
Right. And that, that begs the question is, like, with opening up the fringe areas, like, I mean, I've been into the Redfern area. I've been into the, the Chewati and the halfway area. They're not super accessible.
No.
And so, begs the question where people maybe don't know what they're getting into. They go buy the bison tag and they're all excited and they put this animal down and they go, well, what do you mean we're going to have to make 12 to 16 trips
to
get this animal out of here?
Right?
Well, yeah, but that's just it. I mean, tons of people that come up from the south, they don't have horses.
Yep.
Right? So you're either backpacking it or you're hoping that you're going to basically run over one on the ATV trail.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of those trails, well, I think almost all of them now are 10 meters.
Yeah. There's some other quarters, but yeah, most of them are like.
So 10 meters does not give you a lot of leeway to go and retrieve an animal either. So it's you definitely hope that there's not a lot of waste left out there because of a poor judgment decision.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the Leonard herd moving down. Like, have you seen that Leonard herd actually starting to encroach on the
Well,
Sickiny herd?
not on the Sicknies per se, but like you just look at like they cross that bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at, I don't know, I've been going up there now for 10 years, and you can see them progressively indicating that they're moving further and further south.
Right.
And obviously there's a great distance between Sickiny and Leonard
Yeah.
at the current moment, but you know, you look at another 50 years from now or
Right.
whatever, those herds expand, and
Yeah.
like those bulls are going crazy distances. And like that herd at Leonard goes right up into the Yukon.
Right.
You know, I just drove up through there, and it's bison all the way from Leonard to the Yukon border.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not something that's imminent, but it's a long term.
It's just it's a preventional method. Yeah.
And they're there's a few other things to it, but that
Now, is the Leonard herd able to be hunted, or is there?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
No.
Is there any discussion in that?
There hasn't been anything
Okay.
recent. I'm not sure. I know there's a few studies going on with them just to kind of figure out
How many there are?
just what's going on and
Yeah.
where they are and what's their range, and just kind of get a little bit more, because there's not a lot of information on them, obviously. And
Is it a bigger herd up there than the Sickiny?
I couldn't tell you offhand,
No?
actually.
Okay.
No, I don't know that off the top of my head, but there's a fair number. Like,
Yeah.
you drive through there and you see, sometimes you can see 100 or more. Like,
Yep.
so I don't know, it's thick country in there too.
Yo.
So
But I mean, just some of the size of those bulls. Like I got
They're
a picture
giants.
of one that was just in the ditch there, and it was just like wow, this thing wouldn't have any problem just ramming right through my truck.
No,
Like, at all.
It's a wonder you don't hear more people getting like mauled by one of them.
Yellowstone Park, but we won't get into that. Okay, so that's some really good information, because I was hoping to learn a little bit as well, because I know that you're quite plugged into a lot of those groups, and I'm not yet.
Yeah.
And so it's good to learn about. I never thought about eventually those herds might intertwine and stuff like that, and how much of a range those bulls really do have. You'd think they're herd animals, so why would they venture too far outside that, especially with the predation and stuff like that? But I could see a pack of wolves having a full day job trying to bring one of those down too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big job, but
Yeah, and there's a lot to it. Like, so this is kind of the first stage
mm-hmm.
of
kind
the
of see how it
management.
lands.
Yeah, so obviously, the reg cycle on a 2-year
Yep.
term. So if there needs to be changes, then we've got an opportunity to make changes, and there's available input from the public and other third party and organizations and
Mhm.
conservation groups. So we're all working together and trying to come up with a solution, and the other portion to this, which is still kind of in the back burner, but if we want to create an area that we want to keep these buffalo bison in this corridor, we're
Mhm.
going to have to look at the habitat qualities and just look at carrying capacities and get a little bit deeper into some more of the science behind it, just because that area is such diverse and rich
Yep.
in wildlife and habitat, right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of discussion right now around the prescribed fire front, and I think a lot would help by getting some fires on the ground and creating some good pastures there for them, and get them
To
out,
keep them there. Yeah.
and then also keep them out of the alpine. That's because that's the other concern, is just the competing tendencies of them. They push all other wildlife.
Well, I've heard sometimes you'll find them in the river, and sometimes you'll find them up there with the sheep.
They're up above sheep. Like, they're just crazy.
That doesn't make any sense, but
and their sheep are already competing with the elk and everything else. And,
yeah.
and you got mule deer and moose, and then moose are in the bottom down there with the bison, and they love willows, but when you do a fire, you get rid of. So there's a lot of competing.
Yeah.
conflicting.
Sometimes you
interests there.
can't have your cake
Yeah.
and eat it too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah.
And well, okay, so we opened one season, but another big reg change was closing a lot of the any bull moose
Yep.
in 7B.
Yep.
So, I mean, personally for me, I'm okay with it. I mean, I've found, like I've been hunting moose for over a decade, and we've been lucky enough to, we've got a little honey hole, and we've got some access to private land that we've actually been hunting for almost a decade, and we've actually been able to somewhat manage our own little piece of property that we have permission on. And it's been
Nice.
really fun because when we first started hunting there, man, trying to find a bull moose was difficult. And, we started finding some location of some licks, and we put the trail cameras out, finding after the combines have gone through the fields, they kind of move on. But one of the biggest things we found was after, I would say 3-4 years, all of a sudden I was getting 3-4 different bulls on my camera.
Yeah.
And, with only having me and my buddy having really access to the hunting of this private property, we kind of made it our own little conservation project. And last fall, within, I don't know, probably would have been about 3 square kilometers or so. I've got a nice vantage point for the spotting scope.
Yeah.
I counted 4 cows, 2 with twins, and 1 with, and the other 2 with calves, all that same year.
Perfect.
So it's great. And before that, it was hard to find a cow-calf pair.
Yeah.
So you start to see this rejuvenation, and you're like, hey, this conservation thing actually works when you do your research ahead of time. You figure out what's there, what's going on.
Yeah.
And then and now we got more bulls in the area. But me and my buddy are like this year, for instance, haven't had a bull on the camera yet all year.
Right.
So it's like, do we even hunt the area this year?
Right.
Do we leave it alone?
Yeah.
Right. Last year we had 3 different bulls, but we only decided, hey, we're going to take one between the 2 of us this year. Right. So it's like, you're doing your own little management thing.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, this year it's, we'll probably go in there and see what we see, but man, and it would be, I think it would be a little tougher this year to pull the trigger just because of the lack of evidence. Like, I have cams out there all year.
Yeah.
Right. And this year, again, we've got good cow-calf pairs out there though. Nice. So something's breeding them.
Yeah.
But we just haven't got eyes on. And that's like, okay, is it just only one bull? Yeah. Like, did they have a bad winter? Who knows? Yeah. So it's really interesting. So anyways, going back to it, they closed a lot of the any bull seasons, which for me personally, I don't mind that, because I do feel that moose can be sensitive to harvest. I mean, if you go out that Pink Mountain, Sickany, Redfern route, I mean, man, there is a moose camp every 500 meters, it seems like, and so much pressure. And they're shooting maybe some potential big trophy bulls when they're those spike forks, or even the little paddle bulls or whatever. Yeah. So what's your take on closing some of that down?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. There's a few different components to that one. So when we're discussing that, a lot of it had to do with the survey results that were coming back from those regions. So just the bull to cow ratios. So for instance, like I think in 734 they had a decline from the last survey in 97 of 51%.
Oh wow.
And the cow the bull to cow ratio was at 21 to 100. So
21 bulls to 100 cows.
Yeah. And so they want to see that come up a little bit. So like around, I think
50 to 100.
Maybe that might be a little bit high, but yeah, somewhere in that 2 to 1, maybe like 40 to 100, kind of like a bit more. So
okay.
So there's definitely that component to it, and then there's other stakeholders that are concerned about the moose harvests and just like you said, there's a increase in pressure in a lot of these areas. They're very open and accessible, And
Lots of agricultural.
a lot of agriculture and a lot of resource industry areas. So, you know, the predation in those areas are definitely easier and higher. And yeah, it really came down to the latest surveys that went through from the ministry and the regional bios, and then when they brought it up through the public advisory council, yeah, it made sense. So.
So okay, well that's really good. So and then kind of a bit on that topic, I didn't write it down in my notes, but I do know, like I heard through the grapevine that they were talking about doing an any mule deer rifle season at the end of October, but it didn't go through.
No.
Why?
Well, I would say, just myself personally, why I didn't go through was just the sheer amount of public concern and the voice. So I think when all these proposed reg changes went to public consultation and was open on the public format, there was a lot of response around that one specifically. And talking with the regional bios, you know, they definitely heard from concerned hunters and outdoors men and women and everyone that's out there that enjoys hunting mule deer understands that, you know, yeah, there's some concern on the maturity level of the mule deer in the region, and just that quality of mule deer in the region. That's a big concern, and the pressure that's on the 4-point mule deer,
right? Specifically,
the specific class, right? There's a great pressure on that. So you're not so, you know, people
need to bow hunt. You can shoot any mule deer with a bow.
I kicked myself a few times.
I can't wait till September 1st. I think you saw on my stories, I found my target buck this morning.
No doubt, eh?
I think he'll go 160 to 170.
That's a beauty,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to start taking advantage of that a little bit more. But anyway, we'll keep that secret between us. And so the discussion with the biologists was that when they did their survey after the season closed, out of, I think, what was her numbers? They came back with, I think there was two or three 4-point class mule deer bucks out of the 100 or whatever that they saw.
Right.
And so at that point, they were concerned was, okay, what do people want? So do you want to have opportunity? Do you want to go and just shoot a mule deer buck?
Right.
And fill your freezer? So here's an opportunity.
I don't know if you've ever eaten mule deer in the rut, but...
So to prove your point there, I've eaten all my mule deer from the rut. And my wife, my kids, they don't have an issue with it.
All right.
It's my trick is, as soon as it hits the ground, you're over there and you're skinning off all of those glands.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And you know what? You just do a clean job, and
yeah,
we've...
I've had good mule deer in the rut, but...
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people, they're like, oh, I wouldn't eat that. You boil it with a rock and you throw the meat out and eat the rock.
Yeah. I've heard that about caribou too.
Yeah, but so anyway, back to the discussion around why they proposed that, was around that, just that. Do you want to just get a mule deer and put it in the freezer, or do you want to have a trophy class opportunity?
Right.
And from the survey, it was just proving that trophy opportunity is not there for, say, everyone. Not to say, you know, yourself, you put your time in, you got your spot, you know, I've got a couple other guys that are texting me saying, hey, look at this, I've got my 2020 mule deer nailed down. There's great mule deer out there. You know,
tied them to a tree,
but you gotta work for them, and they're in a dark, deep, secret valley that you know you'll never find them.
Yeah.
But then you've got everyone else that wants to just drive around the back road and get a little spiker or 2-point and
That's why we have whitetail.
put it in the freezer for sure. And I think that was just part of the discussion.
Yeah.
It's like they're seeing that shift in the population dynamic where, you know, at the end of the season, there wasn't that number of quote unquote trophy animals.
So here's the other
Class
the other thing though. There's a lot of 2 and 3 pointers, great bucks that will never mature into a 4-point or just genetically don't have 4-point.
And so that was the other component of that discussion was like, here's an opportunity. You know, I saw
a 2-point season.
I saw a 2-point season, I saw a 2-point last year that in 4-point season that he was outside his years by like 4 inches and he was 18 inches tall, but like that's all he'll ever be is just this giant 2-point. And you're like, oh my goodness, like that is something crazy. But so then, yeah, there was a lot of discussion around that, and it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't an easy proposal, but like I did a couple of town halls around just getting the message out that these reg changes were coming up. And, you know, we had our open house there at the North Peace Rod and Gun Club there at the clubhouse. And that was like this specific topic was like very...
ate up a lot of time.
It was very animated and, you know, it had a lot of people get involved and voice their concerns. And it was great. It was great for discussion. It really brought a lot of people out and you know, and I think it shows that I think this example of this proposed reg change that didn't go through is a great example of when the people that are out and on the ground and in tune with what's going on in their backyard voice their concerns to the people that make the decisions, and they were heard. And they were heard.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I found too, because I talked to a lot of guys, and they're like, "Man, this is the worst idea ever." And I was like, "Okay, there's a lot of sides to the coin because, you know, like you say, 2-point outside his ears, and that buck will, unless he gets shot in bow season, will never, you know, probably get harvested." Yeah. Right? Whereas like, okay, are we spread now because we're pressuring the 4-point so much? Are we spreading more 2 and 3-point genetics? Like mule deer are kind of one of those species where they don't just grow extra tines all the time. Whereas like, you know, an elk will start splitting, you know, moose grow, even whitetail, right? But like, it seems like why don't mule deer do that? I don't know. Yeah. But I would, you know, because I remember a few years ago now, I don't exactly remember how many years ago, but you know, they took the 4-point down to the 3-point season, which I think took some pressure off the 4-point bucks for sure. When they bumped it back up, I was like, okay, was it because there's low numbers of mule deer now or whatever? Because I see a lot of dead ones in the ditch getting hit. Yeah. You know, so yeah, that's one I think is going to be tough at any point.
Yeah, I don't think I was around specifically when that, or I might have been around, but definitely not nearly as involved or in tune or whatever there. But I think, you know, we had a couple of rough winters and just, you know, that population, I think it crashed in, was that 2005 or 4 or something like that? Or
that would have been
6?
Right as I would have started hunting, so I don't really remember a whole bunch.
Yeah, so it was, you know, a few years ago anyway, there was a big crash, and I think that was right when I was moving up here. I was like a couple years after that, and people are always talking about, oh, the mule deer hunting here was so great a couple years ago, and we had those hard winters, and so I think, you know, it's not something that, they proposed a reg change for that any point season for a couple of reasons. Not to say that was going to be, that's the way it's going to be for the next 50 years. It's like, well, right now at this point in time, this is what our population is telling us, and this is, as wildlife managers, this is a strategy that we could use to either, you know, manage for, what do you want, trophy quality, or do you want to fill your freezer? Yeah. So here's an opportunity to have.
And I'll tell you what, man, if you've ever eaten September mule deer,
I'm going to try this year. That, or you got to get a pack of steaks.
Oh my gosh. Like it is just, it was, you know, and everybody had told me that. And, you know, I was still kind of waiting to harvest my first mule deer. And and I harvested that big one that I have on my wall. He was actually my first one. I had missed ones before, and ducked my arrow, jump string as they say.
Yeah.
And it's real. They actually do it because I saw it happen with my own eyes, with my own arrow.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's because they don't have the fat on them yet, or they're just not rutting, which probably has a lot to do with. But man,
I think it's a diet thing too.
Sure, right? And I don't know if I've ever tasted better meat. I'll be honest with you. It was crazy. And going back to, do you want to fill the freezer or get a trophy? Well, but it's also two different dynamics. Like if you really want a mule deer that bad, learn to bow hunt.
Yeah.
If you want it that bad. I mean, the challenge of bow hunting is just crazy awesome. But there's your opportunity.
It's very frustrating.
Like don't say that you don't have opportunity when you do, just because you don't want to bow hunt.
Yeah, but
right?
some people are not bow hunters.
Exactly.
Or don't have the time, or maybe September just doesn't work for them for
whatever reason, right? Chase an elk or whatever.
XYZ, right?
Yeah.
September's a very conflicting month.
Well, it is, and there's so much open, right? And well, do you go after your elk? Or do you go after your mule deer?
Do you go sheep hunting? Do you go goat hunting? Do you go bear hunting? Do you go moose hunting? Do you go elk hunting? Like, what do you want to do?
Like, are we saying right now that we have too much opportunity? Is that what you're saying?
No.
But and that's what I'd like to showcase as we enter into our first, full on filming year.
Yeah.
And stuff is like every hunt, if you have more than one tag in your pocket, is an opportunity hunt, because it's not like. Sometimes, you look at Alberta, right? Like they're heavily into draws and stuff, which whatever. But, if you're going moose hunting, you're going moose hunting, right? Whereas like the 7-foot black bear shows up, but you can't for that management unit or whatever, right? And whereas here, if I'm black bear hunting or whatever, that's my strategy on day one, and we're out glassing and a 6-point bull elk walks out, it just became an elk hunt.
Yeah.
And that we're just blessed to have that opportunity.
Very much so.
And so, but some people just love hunting the rut because it's exciting, right? Like I've harvested mule deer in the rut as well, and I almost couldn't get a bead on them because all they're just doing is just chasing the does all around the field. It's like, sit still.
Yeah.
And so that was an exciting adventure, and my bow hunt was an exciting adventure. So opportunity is endless. But anyways, okay. Let's
I could go on.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so this one was kind of a big one for me. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but wireless cameras.
Oh yeah.
So I personally don't own any, and I was actually looking at getting some.
Yeah.
But now they've introduced this regulation where you got to pull them August 1st till December 10th.
Yeah.
So in part I get it, because if you're just waiting for that picture to arrive and then you're going to run out there, I get that point of it. But the other side, for like the reason I use trail cameras is to not pressure an area.
Sure.
And so like if or like, so I don't have to drive, I've got some cameras that are 2.5 hours away from here.
I've been trying to get cameras 20 minutes from my house, and it's just a chore just to go get them.
Exactly, right? And so it's like, you gotta, hey guys, we're going hiking as a family today. And so it's one of those things where, like, I do believe it's a mindset thing, and there are maybe people out there that wait for that, okay, he's there right now, we can go, and it's only 15 minutes away, so they might have an opportunity to catch it. But I've been managing without wireless, so it's not to say that I'm like, well, now everything's screwed up for me.
Yeah.
But I was looking, I was like, man, it's a time saver. It's a saver that if I've got trail cameras out in my, whitetail spot over here and my moose spot over there, I don't have to take up a day on my weekend to go and check trail cams.
For sure.
So it's a catch-22, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt, the trail camera industry a little bit. Like, there's lots of wireless trail cameras.
People are still going to buy them because they can run them the rest of the
time. You can still, that's fair. That's fair.
And I think so with that one, that's an interesting one as well. So there's that one. There's a couple other technology based
electric bikes
and certain scopes and
drones,
guns, like smart rifles or whatever.
Yeah, electronic triggers.
Yeah. So like that whole electronic thing. So that's a funny one. There was a bunch of discussion around that as well, like especially the scopes on crossbows per se or whatever. That was another heated one. But for specifically to
Did they take it away?
What they do, I should.
You know what? Honestly,
I shouldn't have opened that.
I don't have.
But
I don't have a crossbow.
I don't think they did. I think they.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in bold in the weapon section of the synopsis.
I can't remember, but I believe they didn't change that one because there was such a backlash to it. But anyway, back to the original question of the wireless trail cameras. So, for instance, the example you use of yourself, the honest, Joe Blow is going to just
using them for the right reasons or whatever.
For the right reasons. Yeah. Whereas, like you pointed out, you're going to have the guy that has it set up, and they're only 15 minutes from their lick and whatever, or they've set up a wall tent camp and they've got 5 of them in a 500-meter radius of their camp, and so they can just sit in the heated wall tent, drink coffee, and wait if they're in service, kind of thing.
Well, there's a lot more serviced areas now too.
There's a lot more service areas, so that was a big premise of it. It comes down to fair chase.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I figured that was a big one.
And so a lot of these new technologies the technologies that are coming out are it's crazy. Like you can't keep up with it. Just with for instance, the bow sight. What was that? By Garmin.
Oh, like the rangefinder within it, it just sets your pin for you, so you just have to send it. And the whole premise around that, though, a lot of people talk to me like, well, it just helps you make a more ethical shot.
That's right.
Fair point. But it's like, why don't you just learn how to shoot your bow?
So, and so at what point, and that's the discussion, is at what point does technology take over and take the skill out of it? Yeah. And take that fair chase out of it.
Well, do you think the electric bikes did that though?
Access. So that's the other component was the access. So it was the electric bikes, they're emission free and whatnot, but
and they don't rip up the ground.
It was are they comparable to if you did run a quad in or a motorbike? You're not physically doing the work.
Right. I get that.
Personally, my personal thought is you're not physically doing the work. Yeah. I didn't really,
because they're silent too.
They're silent, right? You creep up on anything
you
real
can quick. Stalk with a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think that was the big driver there on that one was just the relationship between, say, a motorbike and that it's the level of effort and ease of access.
Because I originally thought, with it was like, okay, well, is it about ecological preservation, like going off the trail, right? Because you're not supposed to go off the trail. But I was like, why? Like an electric bike isn't gonna really rip stuff up.
Leave a big rot.
I mean, for me, there's some parts where I'm just like, I like to work a little smarter and not a little harder, right? Yeah, so I mean, if you can put like one of those game carts behind an electric bike and help you haul out more meat at once and things like that, I'd see a lot of value in that. Yeah. And stuff like that. So again, that was kind of one of those
road closure areas too, right? So it's trying to find that medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, like for me, I'm on the fence either way, right? Like I can see points of like why
I would have liked to have had one at certain points of my hunting adventures.
Yeah, like I mean, I wouldn't if I was going sheep hunting. I personally wouldn't bring an electric bike, anyways. Like there's hills you're gonna climb and things like that where that has no value to you whatsoever, right?
Yeah. Like but there's certain areas just to gain access into sheep country that you could use one.
Yeah,
and it would get you significantly farther, faster. Than if you were walking.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I have a lot of stories that like sucked, but then you're like, man, like I learned a lot. It was an adventure story. Like first time I ever packed out an elk by hand, Yeah. I packed out the hindquarters without deboning them.
Yeah.
Probably won't do that again.
Well, you still will sometimes.
Maybe, but it's like, why am I carrying that
Boning
extra
cuts
weight?
are really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a bone saw, so it really
Yeah.
didn't matter to me either
Yeah.
way, and things like that. But it was like, at the time, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, oh my gosh.
One story to to kind of derail for a second, and we'll come back. But a couple of years ago, we went up for late season sheep hunting, and Buddy really wanted to have boning cuts, so he hauled up his sawzall up the top of the mountain. It was a trek.
Extra 10, 12
Oh yeah,
pounds.
but it was just for a day trip, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, so now we're in the market for a lightweight sawzall. If you know of anyone with.
And you can get the battery operated ones.
Boning cuts. That's what
you're at. Well, did you get them?
No, we didn't.
Oh. So, but again, that's a story, right?
Yeah.
Everything's got a story. So no, that's good. Okay, let's. There's just a couple other ones I had. Like I noticed that they eliminated spear hunting.
Yeah.
That kind of surprised me because I was like,
hang up my spear.
is that many people spear hunting? And if people are spear hunting, I feel like they would be fairly good at their craft. Yeah. So that was kind of just a weird one.
I think that one just comes down to around the perception and that.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad media around some stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, if you only saw how far the bear went, he died pretty quick. I've seen a lot of bad rifle shots that took that animal a lot longer to die.
Yeah.
Them hit by a broadhead that weighs almost a pound.
Yeah.
But and then just another one just to note is the reduction of the cow elk season by 2 weeks. So that's kind of a big one because
and there's more to that one too even.
Okay, elaborate.
With so how they had it as 720A for the agricultural zone.
Yes, I noticed that took it out.
They've taken that out and they're separating it back out into their separate MUs. Mm-hmm. So which is good, in a sense, from the last year's surveys, and that's what drives these decisions is the regional bios. They go out and do the surveys, and what they came back with and presented to us was here's where our populations are physically as well as numerically, and they asked the question, do you feel like we need to manage in this larger area as a whole, or should we be managing it more locally and specifically, because numbers in the south piece aren't equally related to numbers in the north piece,
right? And
so is it fair to manage those populations as a whole, or should we be separating them out into 733, 734? And it just made sense, like based on where the majority of populations were, as well as just the numbers and the densities that they want to manage too. And so that reduction, they felt there was it's a long season, so there's a lot of pressure on those cows. The other side of it was as well as the LEH opportunity as well, right?
Late season.
So those cows are getting pressured from middle of September on to end of February. Right. It's pretty well, other than November and parts of December, I believe. But so the big thing there was that they've kind of met that management target for the population, and so 10 years ago, they set all this up, and have been trying to drive that population in the ag zone down to their management objective around 45 to 5,000 animals kind of thing. And so that's where they're at. And so it's a matter now of like, okay, well, we hit our management target, so let's start
phase whatever.
The next part of that cycle, right? Of specifically managing certain MUs as they are.
No, I think that's a good thing too. Like I was interested. I was always wondered why the big region, why the 720A, and not just the management of
but a lot of that stemmed from obviously the conflict with farmers and the egg zone,
Yeah.
and so then they came out with a lot of compensation measures for farmers,
Crop damage and
crop
stuff.
damage, as well as fencing.
Yeah.
And so now, a lot of the producers they've got all their elk fences up, and hay yards are protected, and
Right.
they're not having the impacts as they were.
Yeah.
Definitely some are still, and that's just the way it is. But that conflict is reduced. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're able to kind of shift gears and look at new management strategies for the area now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll move on. We can just quickly talk about this one before we talk about the Wild Sheep
Sure.
Society. Is there any, in your opinion, any changes that you would like to maybe be looked at in the future? It's okay. It's okay if we get backlash. It's part of the show because it's our opinion.
Yeah. So personal opinion. So for just like reg changes specifically, or
yeah, is there anything that you've always thought like, man, I wonder why this hasn't been raised yet, or why aren't they changing this? Or
so I think, I don't know. I'm definitely a little biased, for sure. I think because I grew up southern Manitoba,
mm-hmm.
We didn't have the opportunity that there is here, and so when it, there was a bow season for whitetail, and there was a bow season for moose. You didn't hear much for like elk hunting.
Yeah.
People, black bear hunting wasn't a thing, and there was no mule deer kind of things. But like there's a bow season, a muzzleloader season, and then your general rifle season.
Right.
And each of them was like 2 weeks.
Right.
And so like that's what I grew up with. And it was like
hunt hard
for 2 weeks in November. Like you pulled out of school and everything else. Like you went and you hunted deer for 2 weeks straight. And and that was that's just what I knew, and I still that's always just been ingrained kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you come to BC and you just look at the opportunity.
Oh, there's everything.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right? And then you look at the length, and you're like, man, like what do I do this weekend? And you can say that for 3 months. Like you start hunting in August, and you go through till the end of November.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky to get an LEH, well, then you're going into February. Like you can go for 6 months. So I think in a personal opinion, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of time that people can go out and go for their adventure.
Yeah.
And you always hear it like, well, I want to go on my mule deer hunt, and I want to go on my sheep hunt, and I want to go on my elk hunt.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I only get 4 weeks holidays a year. Like, how are you? And I have to do a family vacation. I have Christmas, and I have like a summer vacation. That leaves me like maybe 1 week if I'm lucky to do a hunt. So like, how are you? Anyway, people prioritize a lot better than some other people, but I think if there is one thing we could look at is ask ourselves a question: is our seasons too long?
Yeah. Well, and I can, I get what you're saying there, because I've always, you look at, like you say, even like Saskatchewan and Alberta, they have specific bow seasons, rifle seasons, muzzle loaders, whatever. And as me becoming more of a bow hunter, not to say that rifle hunting isn't challenging, that's not what I'm saying, but I was just looking for a different type of challenge and things like that. It was like, man, would it be nice to hunt some of these animals without the rifle pressure? Because here I am, in rifle season with my bow, and people are like, you're basically almost handicapping yourself. But at the same time, well, I want the challenge, so I'll do what I can when I can. But like some specific areas, hunting elk in the rut with a bow and getting those close encounters without them hearing rifle shots going off in the next drainage over or something like that. And, like there is the bull moose kind of archery only during the rut, which, it's just because they're really stupid, at least give them a chance, right? So only shoot them with a bow. I get that. And the mule deer, but, I do think there is something to be said about having, shorter seasons or different types of seasons. For sure, for different types of opportunity, because is it about purely the animal harvest or is it about the hunt? Because if it's about the hunt, then you're going to have very different adventures with different, like your archery muzzleloader type of seasons, right? Not necessarily shorter or longer, but just the types of weapons you can use at certain times, right? The one thing about the shorter season is, and going back to when we were talking about the mule deer, why that didn't go through or whatever. For us, we've had a problem a lot with poaching and trespassing during regular mule deer season on the private land that we've got permission on, and to the point where I almost feel like I'm becoming like the neighborhood watch, and I'm going out there even though my tag is filled just to see if someone else is ripping through the field.
That's right.
And stuff like that. So there is, rabbit trail, but there is an accountability piece there, I think, where, there are people out there that, their objective is meat. Right? They don't care about the story or how it gets done or whatever. And to each his own. I've hunted moose like that sometimes. Where it's like, I need to put some meat in the freezer and, I'll go shoot the immature bull and whatever. But, just making sure that the ethics and everything else is still in line. So,
that's right.
And on my side, and then I hope I don't get shot with all the comments, but I have maybe you've heard, maybe you guys have even discussed this, I don't even know, but in Alberta and things like that, they have, if you want to hunt in this management unit, you need a draw if you're not a resident of that management unit or whatever. Has there been discussion around, if you live in region 4 to be able to hunt in region 8, you need a draw?
Region 9B.
Yeah. Not 7B. Has there been any discussion about regional draws or stuff like that?
Not at that extent that I've been involved with. There's definitely a lot of discussion around just around the campfire and whatever, right? Like, I wish, we would do this or we would do that kind of thing. And hunting is becoming more popular.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And it's people are connecting to their food, and that's great. So, we have to acknowledge that, and we have to accept that is going to be the trend that we're going to be faced with, and so I think as hunters, as we are, and as members of a community that hosts a lot of opportunity and a larger portion of the opportunity for the province. We're gonna continue to be that funnel for the rest of the province to come and hunt. And so I think with that, though, we have to acknowledge that we need to manage our wildlife to accommodate that increase in pressure and the increase in hunting activity. And so the argument I get when I bring up let's shorten the seasons is like, well, all you're going to do is condense everyone into a smaller area for a shorter amount of time.
Right.
Whereas, now you could go one week and I could go the next weekend and someone else goes, and we'll never see each other.
Yeah.
So that I get it. That makes sense to a degree. But we also got to look at is like, okay, I can prioritize this year for moose. So this is going to be my moose hunt year. Next year is going to be my elk hunt year. And then, we're very lucky that we can have a different pursuit each month.
Or each week.
Each week.
Yeah.
for 3 months kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's such an internal conflict for me because I love to go and I don't have a lot of time, so it's great to have the long period of time.
Pocket full of tags, and
if I can go for a weekend, I go for a weekend. I can hopefully get something done, and if not, well I can wait a month and I can go again.
Yeah. The opportunistic hunter.
It's just the way it is. But then if my hand was forced to choose, well then okay, I'm not going to buy a pocket full of tags, so that hurts, the conservation fund that some of our money of our tags goes into.
Yeah.
Or it, makes me focus and become more successful at that one thing. But then it also bringing it back to having, a lot of people come up and the increased pressure. And if there was to be a draw or whatever for out of region hunters, I don't think that'll ever. I shouldn't say don't think will ever happen, but I don't think it would happen.
It'd be hard to enforce.
It's hard to enforce, as well as just the appetite for it, like from everyone else. Like the argument is, I don't go down to Region 2 to hunt. So like, why do people go to Region 7? It's like, well, there's no
game diversity.
There's no moose. There's no elk in Region 2. Well, there's elk in Region 2, but it's just the argument, and I get it, and that's fine, and I'm open. Like you have to be open. You have to be inclusive of everyone that's getting involved now, because I think, and I'll touch base on this a bit more once we get into the other subjects, but right now with everything in the media and whatnot, like as hunters, we need to educate everyone.
Yeah.
And I think if there's more people getting involved with hunting and more people advocating for hunting, for their food source or for family or for whatever reason they find themselves coming to hunting for, great. And if it's in our backyard, then trust me, it sucks. I've had elk shot out from under me. I've had deer shot out from, like, it happens. But then at the end of the day, you're like, hey, congrats, and good one. And
as long as it's on public land,
well, whatever, right? You know what I mean? And I think we just have to. We all have to come together on it. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I mean, like, the debates I've had with people is like, okay, well, I get it. Like 7B has a lot of diversity, compared to other regions, but why don't we get first dibs? Right? Like, why doesn't 7B get a 7B season, and then it opens up to everybody else?
2 weeks. We get the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? That'd be great.
Right. And that's what I mean, right? Is like, that's what I hear is like, well, I live here.
Yeah.
I should have first dibs.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go out to all those areas up the highway, and it's just wall tent after wall tent after camper after wall tent, and you're like, well, why did I even come out here?
Yeah.
I've had that, and I've been frustrated.
Oh,
I mean, I'm a bush pusher a bit more, so like I get off the beaten trail, and honestly, if you get off the beaten trail, your opportunities open up anyways. But I get that point where I've accepted the fact that we're gonna have to share, and I'm not gonna cry about it.
Yeah.
So I've have some really good relationships with some farmers and provide myself additional opportunity through that.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the guys coming up from down south or other regions won't have that opportunity. No. And if
and you see it every year. Oh, I got a cow LEH 720. Like, who's got private land I can come hunt?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Why
around the none of your business creek?
Why are you doing this now? Like, why didn't you start reaching out in June, July, or start making those connections?
As soon as you have the draw,
you have it. So
it's
I don't know. There's a lot of dynamics. Everyone's different. People are
a lot of tags don't get filled.
A lot of tags don't get filled. Like, I remember when I used to live in Kamloops, and buddy's like, oh, you need to put in for this elk draw. We'll go do it. We got it a couple times, and we never went and did it. Like, it's just
time, right?
Time,
yeah. I hear that. So
priorities.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get to some projects that's going on at the Wild Sheep Society, because you're a big part of that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I know very little about that.
Cool.
And so I'd like to learn more. So like, what are some of the bigger things that are kind of on the docket right now?
Okay, well, I'll just start with like a brief overview of the Wild Sheep Society.
Sure.
So the Wild Sheep Society of BC is a nonprofit organization and started in '98, and so they focus on wild sheep in British Columbia and basically advocate for the conservation of wild sheep and their habitat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's a so where wild sheep call home in BC is very diverse.
Right.
Because you've got Region 8, Region 4, 3, 5, 6, 7B, and
7A.
7A, yeah. So, yeah, there's a wide range. So
Yeah.
everywhere from the Yukon border down to the United States border, and everywhere in between. And so there's a vast range of 4 different species of sheep and their habitats and everything that goes along with. A lot of those areas in the south are near large urban centers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the areas, up in the northwest are very remote and inaccessible.
Yeah.
And then you got, areas here in the northeast. You've got bighorn and thinhorn sheep in the northeast.
Right.
Like, it's such a gamut of management and management strategies and conservation efforts. And so the Wild Sheep Society plays a big part as a stakeholder in driving projects forward and helping facilitate projects with other stakeholders as well as ministry, and advocating for basically the wild sheep of the province and what concerns are going on either with
Right.
habitat degradation, health, population status, and those types of things. So we do all of our funding through fundraisers and raffles and a lot of just like merchandise sales and just your typical grassroots kind of nonprofit stuff, right? So we have 2 big fundraisers every year. Obviously this year we got canceled in Kamloops, but we had a successful northern fundraiser in Dawson.
Okay.
So at Dawson Creek there we have our northern fundraiser, and this was the 4th year that we ran that one, and very successful. I think this year we were 450 people.
Oh wow, that's great.
Sold out in 18 hours, something like that. So very, very popular in the area. It's a great night out. Lots of great items and just an awesome atmosphere to be in, and we raised some good money for sheep conservation, and everything that we raise at that northern fundraiser stays in the north.
Oh, okay.
So that's one key component of it there. And then we have other fundraisers, so like the Kamloops AGM. So that's our big provincial show, call it. And so that Kamloops convention is 2.5, kind of almost a 3-day marathon event.
Yeah, it's a convention.
It's a convention, right? And 2 big nights. We got our Friday fun night and then the Saturday gala kind of banquet night,
right?
And live auction and so it was very unfortunate with COVID. That happened right the night before we were about, like, everyone's flying in, and we got that director call to come to the room, and we made the decision to pull a pin there the night before. So it was a very hard, very tough decision, and it really impacted, our bottom line of being able to support the projects that we have currently going on throughout the province. And then we also have what's called the Jurassic Classic, and so that would have happened this last weekend down in the Fraser River, and so they partner with BC Guides.
Okay.
And so like with GOABC, and so Guide Outfitters Association, and so yeah, that's a weekend of sturgeon fishing, and it's
nice.
a smaller group, very more intimate group, but yeah, again, very important fundraiser.
It's money
for us,
in.
and it's a great time, and you know, it's the Fraser River, and I don't know if you've ever been sturgeon fishing.
I have one time, and
amazing.
I caught a big sturgeon too, which was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so yeah, mix that in with some sheep fundraising, and you got a good recipe for some fun, and so anyway, that got canceled again. So that's another one that, you know, hurts our bottom line for fundraising, and so we had to kind of adapt this year, and you know, our supporters, like our members, are we're not anything without our members, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we're sitting around that 1,000 strong right now. And
okay.
Yeah, it's in the last 3 years we've tripled our membership pretty much, and
wow.
And a lot of that is, you know, people stepping up into life memberships and Monarch memberships, and a lot of that growth is around, you know, people seeing money go on the ground,
right,
and seeing, you know, an organization that is advocating and is getting something done. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been on the board now. This is my 3rd year, and you know, the just being able to spearhead a project, you know, it's like, okay, you talk to the local ministry biologist, and I want to help out. Where's a gap that, you know, that we could help you out? They, you know, you have a conversation, you build a relationship. And I was like, you know, well, we haven't really looked at this for a while, and so you figure out some funding, and you talk to some other biologists, and all of a sudden you're getting some collars on sheep, and you're moving forward with a project. So
so what are some of the big ones? Like, were you able to complete any projects this year?
So right now we haven't completed like any of our big projects.
Yeah, they're probably multi-year.
They're all multi-year, like 4 or 5 year kind of thing. So right now we're heading into our 2nd year of the Williston Lake herd health assessment. So the Dunlevy and the Schooler herds there, just because so let me back up. We looked at that herd specifically because in Region 6 they've been doing a health assessment study there. So Bill Jex and Helen Schwansha and Kaylee Thacker there, they've been monitoring the health and herd dynamics over in Region 6, and just seeing some of the effects on lambing and feed quality, and seeing what's happening there. So I wanted to bring that over to 7B, and there was a study done 10-15 years ago now in the Williston area. And so the other component to that was the health side of things, and as we'll touch base on more here later, but at the time, a couple of years ago, when we started looking at the Williston Lake project, was first learning about MOPI, so the Microplasma of Pneumonia.
Okay.
And so MOVI for short, because that is a mouthful.
Yeah.
And so M.OVI, if you want to look into that a little bit more. But anyway, it's a pneumonia that's transferred between domestic sheep to wild sheep.
Okay.
And so I looked at, and being out in that area, knowing that, there's, you know, not to say all producers are bad or whatnot, but there's producers in the area with domestic sheep and goats, and, you know, it's been known that those sheep come down into certain areas, and it's like, okay, well, there's a chance. So
Mhm.
let's have a look at it, because 10, 15 years ago, we didn't look at the presence of MOVI.
Right.
So let's have a look at this herd to see if there has been any changes based on that previous study, as well as is there any potential for MOVI in
Right.
that herd. And so yeah, it got some traction, and
So are you spearheading that then?
yeah, I
Okay.
was one of the initial driving components
Nice.
of that, and did the initial Fish and Wildlife Compensation Fund application,
Mhm.
and then yeah, got involved with a couple other biologists, and so now, with more biologists on board, it's a lot more in their hands, but there's still the components of doing the proposals, and
Yeah.
and kind of coordinating field work, and just being involved and updating other stakeholders and proponents, and working with the local biologists, like the ministry biologists, and yeah, it's what once you start, it's hard to
Yeah. Yeah.
get out.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Or, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go this route. Or
Yeah, well, and then it's just multi-year too, right? So right now, heading into year 2, we got a few more collars to put out. So this spring, we were able to get 6 collars out,
oh, okay.
and that was based on, some of the terrain. They're just hard to capture.
They are sheep.
in that country, and then just timing, just weather.
Yeah.
As a big component of it. So hopefully this winter we'll get a few more collars out in that area, and then and the health sampling. So right now we're just monitoring the lamb recruitment and populations, and we're waiting on some of the lab results to come back from the testing, and then what will happen from there is, as long as we don't have a confirmed case of MOVI or any other disease instance there, we can look at, based on the collars, we can look at their specific ranges and their uses, and we can build a habitat management strategy for that. So that would then come in like years 4 and 5.
Right.
And that's the gist of a bigger project.
Okay.
Like that, and so it was really interesting. Last winter, I had one of the local Fundraiser biologists phone me up and say, "Hey, we've got some budget, but we don't have any way to get it on the ground. Like, we might have to defer it." And well, give me a second, and make a couple phone calls, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, we're all on a conference call and we're making a plan. And it's tough with COVID, but we were able to get biologists in the air, and we were able to get a survey conducted on the bighorn population to the south of us here, and
right.
and utilize the funds that were available, and now we've worked on a plan, and there'll be there'll hopefully be another project coming up, for the bighorns. Here in 7B. So
okay.
And that'll be based around the same kind of premise. It'll be the herd dynamics and habitat selection, and just finding out a little bit more about that sheep population, because there's not a lot of information on the bighorns here in the Northeast. And so that was just another great example of just where the Wild Sheep Society comes in, especially locally.
Yep.
As a resource for the regional biologists to reach out to, and because they're so tied up in every other aspect of their jobs and careers that they're not. There's so many connections and networking and
you're like a facilitator.
You're kind of that middle ground where you've got the private consulting world connections, as well as other greater, like the Wild Sheep Foundation, and Wild Sheep of Foundation Alberta, and just connections throughout
resources,
the other jurisdictions, and groups like such as the North Peace Rod and Gun Club or any other stakeholders locally. We can help out and we can facilitate getting a project like that off the ground. And so that's kind of like a few. There's another project that's kind of getting kicked off here. We just got some pretty good headway on it, and that's for the sheep specific prescribed burns.
Okay, yeah.
And so the other director local to Fort St. John here, Josh Hamilton, he's been spearheading this project, so it's more his baby than mine. But just from the little bit I've been involved with it, there we've been battling. Battling is probably not the greatest word, but we've been working really hard to get prescribed fire back on the landscape for sheep and other ungulates, and it's been, I think, for 4 years now since we've done our Tashodi fires. 4 or 5 years since we did the Tashodi fires.
Yeah.
And that was a great success. We're another it was another collaborative project with multiple stakeholders and First Nations, and that it had a big impact, and everyone wants to see that because it helps the populations, and it creates valuable habitat and winter range, and so anyway, we've been going back and forth with a bunch of the regulatory authorities, and finally we've come up with sheep specific burn plans, and right now we're just into the data collecting stage, and we're doing some fundraising right now for that. So there's a raffle out right now for a great base camp package put together from local backcountry here. So yeah, if you got any interest in that, please reach out to myself or Josh Hamilton. A little selfish plug, but
that's all right.
But yeah, all that funds goes into that project. So
is that a plan to do next year, to do those burns?
We're looking for ignition in 2021, and it'll shape up to be a 5-year plan.
Okay. Yeah. Like a burn each year in different locations. Okay. So just an on-topic question, but rabbit trail off of what you're talking about. So when you collar these sheep, so I haven't heard a lot of discussion about it, but I'm just curious. Can you shoot a collared sheep, a collared ram?
Yeah.
Like that's...
You can shoot a collared elk. You can shoot a collared mule deer.
Okay.
People do it.
Okay.
It's
like, is it ethically frowned upon? Like, because I mean, like, if you're hunting stone sheep...
People shoot collared wolves.
Yeah. But, like, because I can see, like, if you're hunting stone sheep, and let's say you've been hunting for a long time, and you find this legal ram, and you put glass on it, and you're like, it's got a collar. Like...
That comes down to a personal... moral decision.
Well, it would be hard to pass up, right? Because I mean, if you're looking to go a -1 club, but is it ethically? Are you interrupting a major research study?
And I think that's just another. A lot of it's coming down. I think that decision comes down to if you have that discussion with your local or with not yours, but maybe the local biologist before you go into an area, or you go and you have that discussion with a local stakeholder or a First Nations group, depending on the area you hunt, they request or require you to have communications with either the biologist or a First Nations elder or community person, and they will tell you if there's something going on, or I think that's just a level of interest that we as hunters could probably do better.
I agree.
Going into some of these areas, like, oh hey, like you know, it's just having that level of awareness
Mhm.
of you know, if you want to continue to do this for the long term, then, you know, I think we're going to have to start having more of those conversations with some of those stakeholders and
Yeah.
seeing if there is something going on that I'm from out of the region, so is there something that I can do to help you while I'm in there? Is
Mhm.
one point, uh, because like you say, there's
Like,
a
should
lot
I pinpoint? Should I drop a pin essentially if I see a
yeah, I've
collared
seen it.
sheep?
Oh, and then you report that back. That's
Yeah.
a huge help for local biologists,
Mhm.
right? And you know, we've got apps. We've got the Moose app. We've got the Winter Tick app. All those types of things. Like there's a lot more to the big picture that I think if we as hunters have 100,000 hunters in BC or whatever the number is, 98 or whatever it is now, if we all kind of and I'm guilty. I definitely like I do my part, but I definitely don't
You
do
miss
it.
parts
I
or
miss parts
whatever.
of it, right? Like I've been trying to upload that Moose app and I haven't yet. But you know what I mean? Like I've seen moose. I should be uploading that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something. If you see a collared animal, then yeah, that's a personal decision. I don't think it's illegal, but that's a personal
This is
moral
kind of an ethic.
decision
Yeah.
that you have to make. And if you do, and you do take one, then, you know, communicate with your local or the local biologist in that area.
Are you gonna have to return the collar?
Return
Pack the collar out with you?
return the collar.
Yeah.
And, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That would be a. I know it would be a tough decision for me because if, like, you know, you might only get one opportunity to harvest a sheep, maybe.
Oh yeah, depends.
So yeah, I
Depends.
guess so. Okay. Yeah, I guess we can, you know, wrap it up here a little bit. So the last point we wanted to touch on is maybe a couple different groups that if people are looking to get more involved with conservation or some, you know, volunteer time or whatever, what are some of the groups that
Well, first off, I'll just back up a little bit, just a little bit more for Wild Sheep Society there.
Sure.
Because we had mentioned it earlier on around just what's going on with the southern
Right.
Bighorn.
Yes. Yeah.
So just before we move on,
Hmm.
it was just announced that we had to dispatch of a couple lambs in the South Okanagan Bighorn herd. And so right now, Wild Sheep Society is doing a provincial campaign called Save Our Sheep. And so if you head on to
Hashtag.
that's right, SOS, Save
Yeah.
Our Sheep. And if you go onto our website, you'll see the links there for more information, as well as what you can do. And what we're encouraging everyone to do right now is get in contact, write letters to your local MLAs, to reach out to, you know, the ministers of ag, the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resources.
Yeah.
Reach out to the Premier and write those letters and make them personal, and just communicate that you want to see separation policies in place between wild sheep and domestics,
Okay.
because that's the barrier that that would be preventable for this transfer of disease is having separation between wild sheep and
Okay.
domestics.
And that because this is kind of how it all came about then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate.
it's very unfortunate, and it's scary because, you know, a couple years ago we had that concern come through Alaska with thin horns.
Okay.
And so I think the Yukon has, don't quote me, but they've removed all domestics out of the Yukon, or they've closed their borders to domestics coming in.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but anyway,
They've taken precautions.
taken extreme measures to
Yeah.
prevent that that pathway for that transfer. So yeah, we do not want to see Moby come into our thin horn herds, because as of
Are they
right
more
now-
susceptible than
well,
bighorns?
not more susceptible, but they're isolated, and
Right.
and you know, you look at stone sheep in BC, genetically speaking, we're the only area in the world that is home to stone sheep.
Yeah.
So, we have as we say, we have a global responsibility to protect and manage these species. So, it's crazy when you look at it as we relate it to what's going on right now with COVID, obviously, and you have to keep your physical or social distancing or however you want to call it, and that's preventing the spread. So between domestics and wild sheep for Microplasma of Pneumonia, you got to do physical distancing.
Right.
And that's what prevents it.
So is it something where you put up better fencing, or is it just
a few other
removing where you can have domestic sheep in relation to the proximity of wild sheep? So
they're looking at some of the things that they've got on the table is like a 50 kilometer buffer, just because of the sheep range, right?
Right, exactly.
They travel large distances.
Yeah.
But obviously, some producers that's unrealistic. So a lot of the work has been done to work with producers to create MOVI-free domestic flocks.
Sure.
So it's not that we're against domestic producers. It's we want to work together to find that common ground where we're not introducing disease into the wild herds, but we're also able to facilitate the domestic production of sheep and goats.
Yeah.
We're working with local 4-H clubs down south. Other local producers are joining on the program and working towards or have MOVI-free domestic sheep flocks, and it's great. Like they're on board, they get it, they see the big picture, and they're working on vaccines and everything at the moment. So
this is great. This is way more in depth than I honestly thought it could be. I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't gone really out of my way to overeducate myself, but there's a lot more deep rootedness to what the Wild Sheep Society is doing than burns and surveys.
That's right.
And I think that's great because creating those relationships and networks with the producers and all that, it all contributes, and you're all pulling on the same rope in the same direction, right?
That's right.
I think that's pretty awesome. So, do we want to hop back on?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, so what kind of groups? Maybe if people are looking to get involved with Wild Sheep Society, how can they do that?
Yeah. By all means, locally, can definitely reach out to myself or Josh Hamilton in Fort St. John, Dawson Creek. We've got Corey Green, Robbie Inglet, and then as well, throughout the province, we've got directors all over the place. And then just go on the website and reach out, get a membership. That's the biggest thing is
I'll be getting one.
Right on. Yeah. That's we always have that discussion around the campfire, so to say. There's how many sheep tags are bought and how many members do we have? So I think it should be
guilty.
It should be part of getting your tag almost. You have to get a membership, because that's the dollars that goes into the ground.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And so
is a lot of what they can get volunteers, for instance, get in on the ground level, participating in those surveys and things like that? Because I've seen stuff on social media where it's hey, we're doing the bighorn counts and stuff like that, and they're always looking for people.
And we did a lamb survey here on foot this spring, and it was tough because we have COVID and
everyone's got to pack their own tents,
all the new parameters you got to work around. But the crews and the volunteers we had that stepped up, they're doing 26 kilometer days, hiking up ridges and
that's a good haul.
Glass and through some pretty nasty, terrible weather. I felt bad because I had the parent that weekend, but that's that's the name of the game, and
It's not easy
it's
either.
not
okay,
easy either. But someone's
it's not sugar-coated
someone's
here.
got to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it would have been great to be out there with the crews and be a part of the survey themselves.
Yeah.
But there's those opportunities coming up. Again, like I said, we're doing multi-year projects.
Yeah.
There's
Fundraisers. People can get involved with that.
We need volunteers at our fundraisers whenever we are allowed to all get back into big groups again.
Or contributors, volunteers or contributors.
Yeah, and then if you have ideas or, you see something or if you're out this season and you notice something going on and you have questions or whatever, just bring them up. And, we're all open and we love talking sheep and hunting and whatever. So that's definitely one avenue there. Provincially, like I said, go on the website and you'll find our directors list and you'll find someone
to contact
and figure out a way to get involved that way. They're doing all sorts of good work down in like the Penticton area, the habitat enhancements and cleanups and that kind of thing. So yeah.
So what's another group outside of the Wild Sheep Society?
Outside of Wild Sheep Society, the biggest one I would recommend also would, contact your local rod and gun club.
Sure.
Locally here with Fort St. John, the North Peach Rod and Gun Club, we collaborate with them on a lot of projects and back and forth, and it's a great relationship to have there. I believe I got to renew my membership. Anyway, it's one of those things. So they're locally, they're everywhere, South Peace, North Peace, Hudson's Hope, Chetwynd. If anywhere you got a rod and gun club in your community, definitely sign up and become a part that way. Most rod and gun clubs are affiliated to the BCWF. So when you get your rod and gun club membership, usually that comes with a BCWF membership, so the BC Wildlife Federation, and so that's another.
Head to their website, see what they got going on.
Head to their website, they've got all sorts going on. There's other groups out there for public access. So like backcountry hunters and anglers.
Okay. Yeah.
And as well as there's a myriad of other access groups.
Oh, sure.
Other one that I actually just signed up for life membership with was the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance.
Okay. Yeah.
So. Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance is another one that's starting to really get some legs under them and looking for help and support in any way for goats across North America, specifically BC. BC's got a large number of goats, and so they're a good one to get involved with as well. Yeah, I'm
sure there's a long list, but those are some really good main ones for sure.
You can definitely get lost in the groups.
Yeah.
But definitely a good start anyway.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you making the time.
I know your life's busy. Me on.
So that's great. And so make sure you check out Wild Sheep Society, get your sheep membership. I'm going to definitely head onto the website here this weekend and get mine, even though I'm not really hunting even sheep this year, but that doesn't matter because I still want to be hunting sheep. Right. So, well, thanks for being on the show, and thank you. Thanks for watching. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our other content that we got going on. So,
right on.
All right, we'll catch you on the next one.